Hey guys, it's April 1st, 2016. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in BJJ. On today's show, the Marianas Open is coming up. I'm going to talk about that. Also, 2 new DVD releases and an interview and techniques by TWIBJJ founder Matt Baker. Here we go. First up, the Marianas Open. This is a tournament that's going to be held on Guam. In addition to an all belt levels tournament, there's going to be a black belt absolute event. And check out some of the names of who is competing. We have, so far, confirmed Tim Spriggs, Keenan Cornelius, Felipe Pena, Luis Panza, and Rhalan Gracie. More names are going to be announced soon, but that is going to be a really cool event. It's going to be held on Guam. I'm going there, going to be doing commentary, and the pay-per-view will be on BudoVideos.com. As for the time, Los Angeles time, Pacific time, will be 10 p.m. on Saturday, April 16th. As far as other time zones, you can go ahead and check out Google for more information on that. But it's going to be a really cool event. Budo is behind it, so you know the production is going to be good. Tune in on April 16th to BudoVideos.com for all of the action. Now it's time for new products. 2 new DVD releases on the way. The first is Lucas Lepri's Neon Belly. The Neon Belly position is something that hasn't been really well explored in any instructional that I've ever heard about. Lucas Lepri goes into great detail on showing all kinds of attacks from that dominating position. Next up is Wrist Locks from Everywhere by Travis Stevens. You know I love wrist locks. It's a very underutilized submission, one that very few people teach, and also even fewer teach defenses to wrist locks. Travis Stevens teaches both in this 2 DVD set. Check it out on BudoVideos.com. Okay, now it's time for the interview and techniques by Matt Baker. Matt runs a very successful school in Bakersfield, California. He has a number of black belt students under him. He got his black belt from Jaques Machado. He's a great teacher, a fantastic competitor, and also now the founder of TWIBJJ. What is TWIBJJ? Tune in and find out. Here we go. Matt, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
Man, it's great hanging out with my friends doing these interviews. I've known you for so long, and I've seen you competing at almost any IBJJF event I go to. I see you there. You've definitely representing the art well with your academies in Bakersfield. And you're one of the humblest guys I know. It wasn't until I went up to visit you that I knew that you had more than one academy there and a bunch of black belt students. I mean, man, you've accomplished a lot.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
Very blessed. So.
Do you feel like you've accomplished much so far?
Yeah, I feel like I'm around a lot of cool people, and I feel very blessed. So I don't know if the word is I think it's just where things fell in place a lot better than it was never planned. It kind of just evolved that way. But I'm very thankful, and yeah, and there's not a day that I recognize it. So yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get good at jiu-jitsu living out in Bakersfield, which is a pretty rural area, suburb of LA County?
That's a great question. I started training just pretty much wherever I could. I mean, at the time, jiu-jitsu wasn't really available, so it was like, there's a guy over here that does it one day and the guy over there, and none of them really, I don't want to say they were really jiu-jitsu, they were just doing some form of grappling, submission play or whatever. So after about 2 years of bumping around wherever I could find something, I just started going to LA, and I started traveling 2 times a week, in some cases more, to Jaques Machado's in Tarzana. So that's where I graduated from. That's where I give credit to. That was kind of like the defining moment. So that was in October of '96. '96. So yeah.
Pretty early on.
Yeah.
Who were some of your training partners at that time?
Well, man, there was a lot of good ones. Eddie Bravo would be the first person I should mention. He's done very well, and I have a lot of funny stories with him. Todd White, he now runs a school in Austin, Texas. Jamie Walsh, got to see a lot of people. It's kind of hard to, Rico Rodriguez popped in every once in a while. It was kind of a melting pot for a lot of people to go there that they ended up doing interesting things. So it was a good environment, and a lot of intelligence was bred back in those rooms, or that room.
You mentioned a few names there, including Eddie Bravo. And, what about it? What about the atmosphere of John Jaques Academy allowed you guys to flourish and make your own styles of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, that's one thing I appreciate a lot, because I mean, looking back, I could have landed anywhere. I mean, coming from Bakersfield, you know, you drive over the mountain and you're like, well, there's different places in LA. I'm very glad I landed there, because it's an intelligence-based school, and what I mean by that is, we're not, when we were there, we weren't doing, you know, 30 minutes of conditioning drills, 30 minutes of working out. We weren't taught to, you know, I mean, John Jaques is a mover, but at the same time, I think more than that, he's a thinker. So, and that's kind of where I think the trend was. I would never say anyone would accuse any people from that academy back then as being like the powerhouses, you know, the ones that were going to, oh, those guys are going to kill you, they're so strong. It was more like we were, you know, we were setting stuff up. You know, it was based on finesse and more smoke and mirrors, as opposed to, you know, there were some setups, but it was definitely not physical. It was more based on the mental side. And that's, you know, it's not a coincidence why Eddie developed the way he did, and you know, a lot of guys from that era and that generation, from that academy, you know, that's what I see was the strength of us. We used our brain more than our brawn.
How much of your learning took place at John Jaques Academy versus training with probably lower belts in your home academy?
Well, I always want to give credit to John Jaques Academy and Tarzana, because, I mean, the biggest thing I got from that was use your brain. And that's kind of the whole thing. It's like, if I hadn't started training there, then I probably would still be doing heel hooks. I still would be, which is, there's nothing wrong with heel hooks now, let's get it. But at the same time, you want to evolve past the archaic stuff that, you know, not heel hooks as a setup, but like physical. Because that's where I was going. I spent 2 years learning a bunch of submissions, but with no direction, no control. And when I started training at John Jaques, the biggest thing that I got from that was more of the technical control. That's where the shift became control someone and actually set something up versus trying to go for some submission when the person can move around, because unless they're a mannequin, they're not going to stay there for you to do that. Mm-hmm. So that was what I would say I definitely learned. That was like the starting point. Now, where I'm at, I'm around a lot of good students, and my students, they're my training partners. They're my to a certain extent peers, because I'm using them as lab partners. You know, whenever I see something that, you know, that might work, then I'm going to use 5 or 6 of them as test subjects. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, but I definitely have learned a lot from my training partners, even though they are the people that I'm teaching.
That brings up an interesting point. I think it was Rafael Lovato Jr. that said that you can train effectively with lower belts. In fact, sometimes it's better to train with lower belts than upper belts. And, you know, you're a very experienced black belt. Sometimes when you go against another black belt, it's like kind of a stalemate. Whereas, and you know, you don't get to really practice your guard pass. You don't get to really practice your sweeps. You don't get to really practice your submissions. Whereas if you go with a lower belt, you can do all those things completely. Mm-hmm. So would you say that sometimes, or all the time, training with a lower belt is more beneficial than training with an upper belt? Or someone of your own skill level?
Well, they move differently, obviously. You're going to get more test subjects with lower belts, because they're going to try more things. They're going to respond. Sometimes it's correct what they do, and sometimes it's not. What I've noticed that when I train with the black belt, the moves are 3 or 4 and around, whereas if it's with the lower belt, even, you know, purple below, brown and black, sometimes the same result. They're doing less transitions, which is smarter, by the way. But whenever they do more things, I can actually say, okay, this was a response when I put my grip here. This was a response when I had the hook there. And it's nice to kind of get a different idea, and you get that with lower belts more. So it expedites the results. And everything that I do as far as a technique, I build data on the way people respond. So if I do a move and it fails, I'm going to figure out why, and I'm going to try it again. I'm going to record why it didn't work that time against this player that's 150, that one that's 190. Okay, this one was 130, had a different response. So when I'm going against different people that move, I can build data faster. And then that's the whole goal. So, and then if a move, I finally conclude that it doesn't really work against the majority of people, then I brush it aside and move on. It's just, I don't care how cool it is. I don't care if it got pulled off by whoever. If it's just a move that has too many red flags or too many, it's improbabilities, and it's not what I would call a true move. Mm-hmm. So.
You mentioned the word true. That's a nice transition to true jitsu. You've been talking about this for a while.
I couldn't help it. It wasn't on purpose. It kind of was fitting. So
I've heard you talk about true jitsu for a while, and I'm not 100% clear on what it is. Maybe you could.
Me neither.
What was the impetus? What started true jitsu, and what is it?
Well, that question, joking around with you, it's kind of hard to explain everything without rambling on, because it's interesting. It's not really a normal thing. I didn't really plan on the Jiu-Jitsu revolution happening, or the movement, or this whole project. What I would say sparked it was, well, a lot of the concepts in Jiu-Jitsu and a lot of the techniques and the philosophy was actually in place 10 years ago. There are things that I was doing and my students were doing a long time ago. But I would say this last year, it became pushed as like, this is actually a system. This is a style of jiu-jitsu. And I've had several people come up to me, students, and say, we're doing things a certain way that's not really quite like, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But, what I want to be clear is jiu-jitsu is not a school. It's not a team. It's a style. So, and the website says it's a revolution, which what I mean by that is that people need to see that you can do jiu-jitsu this way, because, jiu-jitsu means the gentle art. But if you look at a lot of people, their approach is aggressive. They're taught, we need to be aggressive. We need to work harder to get a better result at this. And I truly believe that that's not the case. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you're aggressive and you're physical, it does provide a result. But you're not going to be able to do that forever. And the thing that I know from my own experiences, with age, I'm less capable of being aggressive. I'm less capable of being physical. But the last 2 years have been the best years for jiu-jitsu for me. I've had a very good run. Thank God. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know. It's probably over now that I said this. But it happened when I became less aggressive. It happened when I became more thought-oriented, breaking jiu-jitsu down to a science. Some people don't believe it's possible. Jiu-jitsu is going to hopefully prove the point that it is. You can science jiu-jitsu.
So if true jiu-jitsu is about not being aggressive, is it about being passive?
No. The thing is that jiu-jitsu breaks jiu-jitsu down to a language, in which I don't think people really think of it that way. There's some people that are guard players, some people that are top players. But what I want to explain, a good analogy, if you speak English and then you are excellent at speaking English, and you're a salesperson, which not everybody's going to relate to this, but if you go to Mexico, it doesn't matter how good you are at selling something. Go sell a car in Mexico. You're probably not going to get very far, because they're going to start speaking and you're not going to understand. So, if you wanted to have any success, you'd probably find yourself, if you've ever been to another country, you say very limited things. You're like, yes, no, where's the bathroom? You don't go too far, because the more you do, the more easier it is for someone to take advantage of you. So it's not so much passive. It's actually, in the realm of jiu-jitsu, you have, pressure. You have leverage. You have flexibility. You have connection. You have disconnection. You have framing. It's not about any one of those. It's about all of them. All of them, but using them at the right time. So that's the other thing. Being passive is necessary, but there's also times when you move. It is one of the biggest things, though. Sometimes when you move, you're going to go backwards. Progress needs to be forward. So one of the rules of jiu-jitsu, it's actually the current one that I have posted, is every move must count. Move with a purpose. If the move that you're going to do isn't just for you, then don't do it. Because if you're going to get some more physical or stronger or more athletic opponent, when you move, you're opening up a window of opportunity for them to fight back. So, I look at it like you have step 1, you establish. Step 2, you pass. Step 3, you attack. But at step 2, if I don't have a clear way to attack and get a submission and not secure the position, I don't want to attack and then all of a sudden go back where I'm in their guard again, because I didn't have, that's just one example. I don't know if that just clear enough.
And I've watched you compete many times, and you don't move a whole lot, but when you do, you usually improve position, and I rarely see you move backwards. So.
Yeah, it has to be forward. I mean, from an earlier competitor's point of view, they move too much, and that's why they'll go forward one step, but then they'll take 2 steps back sometimes. So the Jiu-Jitsu system, that's one of the many things that's addressed, and a lot of the Jiu-Jitsu, philosophy and beliefs, it comes from competition. Now, I want to be really clear, Jiu-Jitsu is not about competing, just it happens to coincide and go hand in hand, because competition is probably the toughest thing you'll do in Jiu-Jitsu. I would say competition is probably harder than a street fight, because street fight, they don't know what you're doing most of the time. Right. Maybe certain areas you're going to be out of luck, but when you face somebody in a tournament, they are doing the same thing. So now it becomes who speaks fluent Jiu-Jitsu, who speaks better, who knows when to let go of a grip, who knows when to hold on, and that's where a lot of this data, that we talked about. It's a lot of competition and a lot of reffing, and just, that was a great move, but just not at the right time. You should have went forward. You should have went back. And one coach, I've noticed this is kind of pressure. That's a very common thing as far as passing, but people don't realize that if someone pulls guard, maybe you shouldn't go forward, because that's where they want you to go forward. If you back away and go negative, make them earn the privilege of fighting you in the guard. And that's probably one of the things that earlier competitors don't process just yet. Some of them do, but I know a lot of them I've seen time and time again, they are going forward and they're falling into the trap that the guard player wants them to do.
And I'm sure you have gathered a lot of data from all of your time reffing. You ref a lot of IBJJF events. Is that something that, when I talk to a lot of guys about the possibility of refereeing, most people are very negative about it. It's a tough job, and oftentimes your obscenities are yelled at you, whether you deserve them or not. So is that something that you enjoy? And if so, what do you like about it?
Well, I enjoy reffing because it helps me get better. I mean, I see it as a privilege, but I also know going to the dentist is a privilege, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fun, but you will get better for it. So reffing for me has given me more concepts, and I look at it like as an opportunity to see what's working and what's not. And the cool thing about jiu-jitsu is there's no guarantees. Like, sometimes the better guy doesn't win. Sometimes it's because he did the wrong thing. So the thing that I try to point out is it doesn't matter how good you are, it matters how good your game is. And reffing has given me a lot of different game ideas. So I would recommend people ref if they have a chance to. So may not like it. It is hard, and people will get mad at you even when you're trying your best. And mistakes happen. But try looking at a computer for 8 hours straight and tell me how you feel, because that's how those refs feel. And then on top of that, go compete while you're reffing. And whenever people yell at refs, they don't realize that there are actually competitors out there that are not cutting weight at the moment, or they are cutting weight. So shout out to the refs.
Yeah, for sure.